Welcome, I'm Diane, and thank you so much for joining me for another episode. Today, I'm going to be sharing my top 5 recommendations for the business books that I think you need to read in 2024. I have read hundreds of business books, and these are the ones that I think are the most life-changing books in terms of money, skills, and time. If you are looking to elevate your life in any of these areas, then grab your cup of tea and let's dive into it. Book number 1 on my must-read business books for 2024 is Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek. Now, if you are thinking that you have seen this book recommended so many times on so many lists for so many years, because it has been around for a little while now, then I would suggest that if you haven't read it already, there is a reason why this book has a cult following. It challenges all of the conventional norms of viewing your work. It comes from the experience of Ferriss having worked as both a 9-to-5 employee and as an entrepreneur. And at the time of writing this book, he was already back then earning as much in a month as he was earning in a year in his 9-to-5 job. Unlike a lot of minimalists who can focus so heavily on slow living, for Ferriss he focuses on both profit and fun. But it's all about creating a system that is going to allow for this. And he talks a lot about this idea of the new rich. And he says that the new rich are defined by one key characteristic, and that is unrestricted mobility. He says that the guard is changing. Being bound to one place will be the new defining feature of the middle class. The new rich are defined by a more elusive power than simple cash, unrestricted mobility. And Ferriss talks a lot about focusing on not just efficiency, but effectiveness. The goal is on doing the right things, not just doing things quickly. The level of detail that Ferriss goes into when describing some of the tips that are going to allow you to have a 4-hour work week is pretty mind-blowing. It is not something I've seen to that extent in any other business book that I have encountered. So I would highly recommend that you read the 4-Hour Workweek to change your mindset on how you see your week and where you put your time. My second book on your must-read business books for 2024 is Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Now, if you know any of my other content, you would know that Kiyosaki is one of my favorite authors, and this is by far his most iconic book. It has been around for several decades now, and it is an absolute classic with a cult following as well. It also challenges all conventional norms of thinking, specifically in terms of business and finance. Kiyosaki's goal is really to build financial literacy in the general public, and he does this through telling a story based on his own personal experiences of having grown up with these two characters, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. In his own life, the poor dad was his biological father, and his biological father actually followed a really traditional corporate path. He studied really hard, he went to college, he got a job, he climbed the corporate ladder, but in the end he actually ended up in a really difficult position financially and in his personal life as well. He contrasts that with his rich dad, who is his friend's father and was a mentor to him. And his rich dad followed a much more entrepreneurial path. He actually created businesses, he created assets, and he was able to have a really good lifestyle as a result of those things. When Kiyosaki first wrote this book, he had to self-publish it because it was so ridiculed by experts in the financial fields and in publishing. But it now has millions of people following its concepts. And one of those is, in particular, how you view your assets and your liabilities. In a controversial opinion, he suggests that your house is not actually an asset. It is more likely going to be a liability unless you change the way that you use it. For me, this is much more than just a book about financial education. It will have you questioning your goals and your values, and it will have you thinking about if they actually came from within yourself, or if you were perhaps more indoctrinated to believe that you had to follow a certain path, as opposed to maybe the path less taken, the path that veers away from what the masses are doing, which is what he observed with his rich dad and the path that Kiyosaki himself followed. Now, of course, whatever you have chosen to do in your own life is absolutely up to you, but reading Rich Dad Poor Dad will at least have you understanding whether that is an investment that is paying off for you. Book number 3 on my best business books to read in 2024 is The Bezos Blueprint by Carmine Gallo. Now, I have to admit, when I first saw the title for this book, I thought that it was just another book that was capitalizing on a famous name, that being Jeff Bezos of Amazon. But what I found after I read The Bezos Blueprint is that it is one of the best books in communication that I have read. It tells the Amazon success story through the perspective of the communication within the organization, of course, led by Jeff Bezos himself. He analyzes thousands of pieces of communication from Amazon, particularly the shareholder letters that Bezos himself wrote. And he also has a deep dive into some of the communication decisions that were made at Amazon. One of those, most controversially, being the complete ban on PowerPoint, which, as we know, is a very forward-thinking move in any workplace. There's a quote in the book that I absolutely love that says, PowerPoint allows speakers to pretend that they are giving a real talk and the audiences to pretend they are listening. Book number 4 on my must-read business books in 2024 is The 12-Week Year, and that is by Brian P. Morgan and Michael Lennington. This, for me, was a complete paradigm shift. It completely changed the way that I perceived time. Most businesses will operate on a year-long cycle. That is how they plan their strategies. But the authors in this book propose to think about your year as being 12 weeks. So completely forget about this annual 12-month concept and completely change your thinking to assuming that 12 weeks is your full year. And the idea behind this is to increase the level of urgency that you feel in your planning and in your goals and the tactics that you undertake to achieve those things. The authors propose that with a traditional 12-month year mindset, that you allow yourself too much time to become complacent when it comes to your goals. You assume that you have so much time to be able to achieve those things that you don't add any urgency into any of your plans. But the 12-week year mindset helps to change all of that. And what I really love is that the authors don't just offer this really big idea, but they give you some really practical tips on how you actually execute on this 12-week year and how you're able to actually review how you are going every single week as well, and to track your performance on your 12-week year goals. One of the key ideas as well is that this isn't about just thinking about your year in terms of quarters. It is about really thinking about this as truly being a year, and to completely disregard any concept that you had of a 12-month year. I would highly recommend reading this book because it will completely change your mind about how you see your years, and it will really help you to focus in on what strategies are going to get you closer to your goals. Whether you are applying that in business or in your own personal life, it is so worth thinking about how you can reimagine your years into being a 12-week year. Book number 5 on my must-read business books for 2024 2024 is actually one that is much more about your personal development or your professional development, and that is Limitless by Jim Quick. I made the move of saying on my review for this book that if I could have rated a book more than 5 stars, this is the book that I would have given that rating to. I absolutely loved this book. It is based on the personal experience of Quick having suffered a brain injury as a young child, and it left his learning journey really challenging for him. He was even once called by a teacher the boy with the broken brain. And he went from that experience to becoming a world-renowned personal trainer for the brain, and he has a star-studded lineup in his portfolio. He shares not just an inspiring story, but a really practical guide as to how you can use the full capacity of your brain. He talks about everything from building your gut health and making sure that your second brain, being your gut, is given the right fuel for you to be able to perform at your peak capacity, and things as practical as how to teach yourself how to speed read. The big focus on the book is not so much about what to learn, but actually how to learn. So basically, you can take the ideas in Limitless and apply them to anything that you are working on. One of my favorite quotes from the book says, "Being limitless is not about being perfect. It's about progressing beyond what you currently believe is possible." And that is a real core theme in this book. It's about pushing your brain's capacity beyond what you currently think it is able to do. It is quite literally training for the brain. If you have found any of this useful, then do please let me know by liking, subscribing, or commenting wherever you are. And if you would have added anything else to the list, do please let me know as well. And don't forget to check out my previous episode on how to read 100 books in a year. I'll see you in the next episode.